Hello everyone, my name is Gracian and welcome to the patch rundown for the 1.0 release of The Last Spell, something we've all been waiting for years and years and years. This is extremely exciting. This game is so freaking good and it's finally out of early access with a host of new features and an incredible amount of balance changes. So let's dive right in and take a look. There's a new launch trailer. This trailer is awesome. Definitely watch that. We will go into the patch notes, but we're going to stick to this deep dive details here first because there are some interesting new things on here. First of all, we have a new map, Glintvine. Now this map has got like a magical anomaly where there's like things floating about. You can see here there's like sort of boxes and statues and things floating. The map is also quite large and empty, so that's a really interesting thing. It starts with some really terrible wooden barricade type objects around the edge, but there's very little for you to like dig up or to help protect your city, so you're gonna have to be very, very careful. And this map only spans 7 nights and they're extremely intense, so this seems like a really interesting challenge for once you've got some meta upgrades and you can handle something that intense. They also said that this map has a lot of other surprises in store for you, especially when it comes to the boss, so I'm a little scared about that, but it looks like it's going to be really, really fun. And then they said here's a little tease of something you might encounter during your run. What do you think it does? Should you kill it or run away? And I'm very curious about this. I wonder if this is going to be some sort of, like you hit this, to me it looks like a black hole, like maybe you hit it and it like sucks things in, but maybe your heroes would be in danger. Or maybe it's some sort of like magical trap. I have no idea. I'm very curious about what these things are going to be that spawn in. I don't know what causes them. I wonder if the boss makes them. They've added some tutorial information for people who aren't familiar with the game. There is a new enemy type, the Kindled. It looks like a fairly basic enemy, and what it does have is an incredible amount of damage resistance. You can see here 70% damage resistance is huge, but pretty little health. So looks like it does magic damage, which is good for your armored units because magic damage doesn't do double damage to armor like melee does. They've got, looks like pretty bad dodge, but they've got a lot of resistance. So magic damage will be the name of the game here because magic damage inherently reduces resistance by 50%. So your magic users now have an extra target to focus on, the Kindled. The other things that your magic users are typically there to fight are these big ghost guys. The gargoyles have a fair bit, I think 35 or 40% damage resist. So you got to watch out for the enemies with that and make sure your magicians take them on or you're wasting a lot of damage. There's a lot of balancing that's taken place. That's going to be in the other patch area, so we'll look into that in a moment. They have enhanced some of the information panel to make data more available at a snapshot. So you can see here, like this is a winged that's being hit by a pistol shot, and it's showing resistance reduction, the accuracy, and it's showing critical chance as well. So this is great. It's showing a lot more information here, so you don't have to go looking in different places for it anymore, which is really, really great. So now you can basically see everything you need to know right here. So it'll show if you do a crit, this is your damage, which is really cool. This is really, really fantastic to have this. They've also introduced a perks planner. This is really cool. Looks like you can sort of probably right-click. Yeah, right-click on perks to sort of like remember for later on. I mean, if a run in this game can take, like, say you're doing Lakeburg, it's a 12-night run. If you're really taking your time, you might be looking at like 11 hours of gameplay. So, if you want to plan out your perks, I'm not going to remember 11 hours later what I was working on. So this is really fantastic to be able to sort of mark your perks ahead of time. They have upgraded the Temple and Mana Well buffs that you can get, but we'll take a look at that when we get into the more specifics of the patch notes. So that is the things that stood out to me as being the biggest in the deep dive part here. So definitely take a look at this. There's a lot more information in here that I didn't go over. I just went over the ones that were the most exciting for me personally. So now let me head on over to the patch notes themselves. Alright, so here are the patch notes. It's a pretty long list of patch notes, a lot of information in weapon balancing. There's a lot of weapon balancing. There's also some really interesting building balancing and enemy balancing, so we'll take a look at that. Quality of life features, there are a lot of quality of life features here. I'm not going to go through all of those, but take a look at them or pause the video if you'd like and take a look at them now. Attributes have changed quite a bit, so momentum, for instance, can cap at 400%, so you can't get like, 1,000% momentum bonus, but that's, 5 times damage is quite effective. They've also nerfed some of the other skills that use movement, like teleportation, so that they don't give you momentum by giving them the no momentum tag. Stun has been very slightly buffed. You can now exceed 100% stun chance, which is great, so that if an enemy has, say, a stun resistance, but you have over 100%, you can still have a higher number than you would have before. Attribute bounds have changed, so the minimum and maximum health, mana, and movement points on heroes has been buffed. The minimums have either gone up or the maximums have gone up, so that's amazing. You also get more on leveling up. So now let's head into weapons. There's some really big changes in here. A lot of buffs, in my opinion. Now, there's definitely some balancing, some nerfs, but most of these things seem to be buffs, which is very exciting. So the sword has lost base damage, but has gained a fair bit of momentum bonus. So basically, they're rewarding that play where you're doing a lot more movement than standing still and just, clicking the basic skill, clicking on an enemy, do that 4 times, end turn. They really want you to position more. The dash is damage multiplier has gone up, and the blade rush has also gone up. So again, movement and skill use is being more rewarded now. Hammer has gained a bit of base damage, minimum, and the stomp secondary skill has gained stun chance, which is amazing. The axe, its basic attack that hits 3, they've removed inaccurate. Now that's fascinating to me. I always thought that was a balance thing because it is a 1-point attack, a 1 action point attack that can hit 3 things. So I thought that was the penalty for having such a wide attack with melee damage, is that it was inaccurate, but they've taken inaccurate out. So I guess they just needed to buff the axe just straight up. They've also increased the size of the axe boomerang skill, which sounds good to me, and they buffed the damage multiplier. This is interesting to me. I never found the axe boomerang to be a particularly exciting skill when the AoE was barely larger than the basic skill, but now the axe boomerang is bigger and does more damage. Fantastic. The dagger, admittedly not a weapon I use very often, but they've upped the base damage by quite a bit, to be honest. This is quite a lot, I think. This isn't a small amount. And they have lowered the isolation multiplier. So this weapon is a better choice when you're just using it as a basic attack. But for isolation, it's a little harder to assassinate big creatures. Though this is, with higher base damage and a lower multiplier, it's still going to do a lot of damage. They've also replaced Perforate with Throwing Dagger, which is really interesting. So now we no longer have that armor penetration skill. We just have a Throwing Dagger now. It does pretty good damage, but it also has no block, so that's still pretty helpful. And now Throwing Daggers has been changed to Poison Daggers, so that's really good. This one is still pretty good. It looks like the damage went down, but the multi-hit went up. That's fantastic. The point of this is to get poison on armored enemies or low health enemies, not to do a bunch of damage up front. The upfront damage doesn't matter. It was always really bad anyway. Looks like the poison base went up a little bit. Again, fantastic. It was the worst way to apply poison. Two-handed sword. The two-handed sword got a bit of nerfs, which makes me sad a little bit because I did always think it was really strong. So it got a multiplier damage reduction and a momentum damage reduction. This is sad to me. The two-handed sword was a go-to for me. Just go around, spend 2 action points to kill 2 enemies in a line. It was pretty effective. They've buffed the charge skill though to only cost 1 mana, so this is a much more viable thing to spam every night. So that's pretty exciting actually. Sledgehammer, looks like it got a minor nerf in damage. I can't say much about this because I hardly ever used it, but it looks like it got a bit of nerfs, bit of buffs, just sort of balanced back and forth here. Looks like a damage increase on the Mega Stomp and the Ground Smash. The Great Axe, pretty fun item, especially as a second weapon slot, so you can switch to it when you need to hit a large number of enemies. Base damage went up. Looks like the leap damage went up. The debuff has gone from reducing their resistance to giving them minus movement. Now that's obviously, this is for it being overpowered. I don't like this. I really wish that was still in there because it was so fun to leap in and then super spin and kill absolutely everything. I'm sad that they're taking away that minus resistance, but the super spin itself looks like it got a very, very minor 0.1 damage multiplier on there. The spear, little tiny minimum damage and maximum damage upgrade, increased the rush damage, the momentum ability here, And they've increased the skewer as well and increased the multi-hit, but they've removed armor piercing and added no dodge. So overall, definitely buffs, but this is just different now. It's going to hit more things, won't pierce armor, but will not let them dodge. This is probably good because this is a melee weapon. So after all, you are, if you skewer them and you were removed and you are armor piercing, then any further hits are going to hit the armor anyway. So you may as well just do more damage to get through the armor and then either kill them with the rest of the attacks or use a different character to finish off the health pool. The wand got a pretty mega upgrade. This is 12 base damage on the minimum, which is huge. That's a huge amount of buff here, and then 12 on the maximum. Sword of Damocles, which is a very basic wand skill, has no dodge now. So this is going to be a very viable option to have a higher base damage with no dodge. That really helps out magicians who usually struggle with dodge chance unless they have plus to accuracy. So make it viable to make your mages a little bit less accurate with some of these skills. And the transfer, move points regeneration now scales with the item. So you're going to give +2 movement at 0 up to +4 at item level 5. And it adds a caster effect of adding damage to somebody. So you're transferring movement and damage to them now. The Scepter has odd changes in my opinion. They nerfed the base damage. They've upped the number of times you can magic bash. They upped the range. This used to be melee, just range 1. Now it's range 1 to 3, but it has a huge momentum bonus. I don't fully understand this. I see that it gives wind walk, so they want you to be more mobile, maybe combine the Scepter and the pistol or the Scepter and one of the swords. Like, I get that, but it no longer feels like a magic item you could use with a caster who has a different set of magic items, especially because they removed Shocking Touch altogether. So I guess now the Scepter has only 2 abilities and only 1 that deals any damage. I find that strange. I find that quite strange. The Magic Orb has been buffed a little bit. Infect is a pretty solid attack. It's gone up 1 use per night. Putrid Ball's gone down 1 use per night, although I can't say I really ever used it 3 times in a turn. Sorry, not per night, per turn. Power Staff, the accuracy has been debuffed from -15% for 1 turn to -10% for 2 turns, up to -15% at -5. So this is obviously a buff if you can get 2 turns at -15, but -10 early on will hurt a little bit, although it does stack. Stunning Entrance now costs 1 less mana, but has lost 10% stun chance, so that's going to hurt. It's going to hurt a little bit. The Fire Thrower has gone down 1 mana, making this a more viable attack to use more often. The 6 mana was definitely prohibitive, especially in the early parts of a run. Tome of Secrets got a damage buff. It got a huge increase to Weakening Touch. Now, Weakening Touch was a skill that I always liked, but definitely found it more situational. But now, I mean, look at this. -20% resistance to -30% resistance. They lower damage by 30% instead of 15, and it propagates 2 more times. This is an incredible skill now. This is incredible. Now, this is a 2 action point skill, so you do have to watch out for that, but I don't think it costs mana. And now it's extremely effective. You can set this up and make an enemy, especially the ones at the walls or the ones about to receive a huge AoE. This is fantastic. Fireball got a small nerf to damage, but it armor pierces, which is helpful. And Lightning Strike here got a small nerf to damage as well. So I think that the Tome of Secrets has really been sort of debuffed as a damage item and buffed as a support item, which is fine, although I do wish Fireball had stayed strong because I didn't really use it enough as it was, and now that it's been it's only been very slightly debuffed, but we'll see how it works. Druid Staff, my heart was pounding when I started reading these changes because I was worried they had messed with my glorious Bee Sting, but all they did to Bee Sting was move it to the 4th slot and increase its mana cost by 1. Obviously, that's going to hurt in the long run because I use Bee Sting like twice every turn on each character that has it, but, not so bad. At least they didn't kill the poison or anything on it. Centipedes has gone up from 3 to 4 uses per turn. That's a very good skill. I believe that has opportunism, so once they're poisoned, you do more damage with the centipedes. It always hurt to only have 3 of those available. Acid Spray is now in skill 3 slot instead of 4. The cost has gone down to 1 AP and 2 mana. You can use it twice per turn, but they have increased the debuff it gives to enemies. So now it will remove more armor, and it actually scales up to 300 now instead of 200, which is incredible. So that's a lot more helpful in the late game when, you know, you've got elite lancers coming in with 1500 armor, and then you're taking off 100 armor. You're like, well, this is pointless. Hand crossbow got a pretty sizable buff to its minimum damage. Its maximum damage went up a bit. Quick shot has removed the movement point debuff and added armor piercing. It's, you know, kind of a loss of one thing, a gain of another. I'd prefer to keep the movement buff, but that's okay, I get it. The slow death skill has taken them down to -2 movement, which is fantastic. Weak spot has been removed, I guess because of the armor piercing of this attack. And then the blaze skill has gone down to slot number 3. Now it costs less action points, less mana. You can use it 3 times. Removed multi-hit, but increased the propagation. So instead of starting the blaze explosion in multiple places, you're just starting it multiple times and making it cheaper. That makes sense to me, I guess. It's a better option now for like your final action point rather than having to save 2. Pistol got a slight nerf to its maximum damage. Momentum has increased, again, sort of encouraging players to use that crazy movement abilities, especially with the grappling shot. The pistol's grappling shot actually got a damage increase, which is great because not killing a unit with the grappling shot was crippling to your plans for that character for that turn. It could get you stuck in places. Isolation multiplier of 1.25 has been added, so this will make it easier to grapple to isolated enemies and kill them, and therefore move into their space. The grape shot damage has gone up a bit, which is fantastic. I actually quite like the grape shot on the pistol. Go to zip over into the perfect spot, and now you can just unleash hell on a group of enemies. Short bow, the base damage has gone up, the maximum damage and minimum damage. The precise shot has been renamed to straight arrow, but they removed the no dodge skill, so that one's gonna hurt. The short bow was fantastic for killing dodgers, and now it no longer has that. Power shot has had its range lowered, its damage lowered, but now it's no longer inaccurate. So it's gonna be easier to hit with it, but it's just not the powerhouse it used to be. I don't know if I'm going to like this short bow after these changes, if I'm being honest. They also lowered Rain of Arrows. Rain of Arrows was an absolutely killer ability. Literally, you could kill every target that it hit under certain circumstances, and they have nerfed it a little bit. So overall, the short bow, in my opinion, not looking good. I mean, at least they buffed the minimum, like the base damage, so then the Rain of Arrows will still hurt. This will still hurt, but, you know, overall, I'm not sure about this personally. We'll see what happens. Longbow, the watch out skill, number 2, has gone up 4 points in range, which is incredible. The dodge buff value increased on higher levels has gone from 40 to 50%. The explosive arrow stun chance has gone up 10% here, which is great. So not a whole lot of changes here for the longbow. Crossbow, again, base damage has gone up. Straight shot uses has gone up to 4. Heavy bolt, which I do like this skill a lot. Difficult to use, but fun. Gone up 3 range, which is fantastic. Impaling bolt, this is the one that can hit like 4 or 5 enemies in a line. The cost has gone down 1 action point. Mana stayed the same. The damage has gone down, but it's added armor piercing. So I think overall this is a pretty big buff. It costs 1 fewer action point, but does 0.2 less damage multiplier. That's huge though. I mean, that's worth it in my opinion. It's just, there are gonna be fringe cases where now you're no longer gonna kill a bunch of things and you're just gonna wound them, but it's whatever. And the explosive bolt has gone down 1 mana in cost, but gone up in damage. Great with me. I already loved using the explosive bolt, to be honest. I mean, it's just the fireball skill, but on a crossbow. Pretty fun. The rifle has had its base damage increased. Rifle shot skill number 1 has had no dodge added to it. Hip shot has an opportunism multiplier, which is interesting. And assassinate has lost 0.5 isolation multiplier. So this is no longer my boss killer is just automatically going to be a rifle. I'm going to have to think a little bit more hard about what kind of weapon loadout I'm going to use for boss killing, because that's how I would do it. Just get crit chance and assassinate on the boss and do half their health in one shot. I'm not going to be able to do it anymore. Offhand weapons is very interesting to me. I think this is a bad change in my experience. I liked that they gave you something interesting and powerful before, but now they have changed offhand weapons to just give you the basic attack. Throwing daggers is now backstab, blade rush is slash, axe boomerang is shred, stomp is bash. So these are the basic attacks. These are not the fun, interesting things anymore. And I personally think that that's a mistake to take away the flavor of those weapons by just giving you an extra basic attack, especially when we just saw all of these weapons in the above part of the patch notes adding basic use times to their per turn uses, if that makes sense. So I'm not going to need basic attacks from the offhand weapon as often or at all, because the weapons I'm already holding have extra uses per night. So I'm not really sure why they did this. This, in my opinion, kind of sucks. I guess maybe it was making them too powerful. I mean, the skills now cost 0 action points and have 1 use per turn. I understand that that's useful, but I'd rather not keep track of this. I'd rather be able to use the cool powers like the grape shot from the pistol or something like that. So we'll see how it feels. Maybe it ends up being great. Other items. So armor, increase the block value on all shields. Now, this is very weird. The brace, fortify, and evasion, so the defensive skills granted by body armors, the buff value has been increased, but the uses per turn has gone down to 1. So that's very interesting. I wonder if it's enough to make the 1 use feel really good, because that would be great. That's almost like saying, here's an extra action point, go do some damage and still be tanky. That would be great, but we'll have to see, there's no numbers on here, so I don't know how much we're talking. I know that some of the early armors, we're looking at something like 25 armor per use, and some of the early armors for block would maybe be like 6 to 8. So we'll see how much that increases. The Meteor Ring has had its base damage increased by quite a bit, especially the minimum. The Meteor Shower cost has gone down in action points and mana, and the range is now better. You can use it closer and much farther away, and it has vision. So you can't, this item is going to be an incredible ability to have now that it wasn't really good. At 3 AP and 10 mana, it was prohibitive to use this dumb thing before. And now, this is just an action you've added to your character that's pretty good. It's still costly. 8 mana is not a small amount, but with vision and that much range, you're going to find a good target, especially with this hell of an increase to the damage on there. Potions, this is big. All potion range has gone up to 0 to 3, so you can now throw at a short distance. This is big. The range can be modified by hero skill range attributes. So if you're losing skill range, you're just back to where it was before. If you're gaining skill range, you could be tossing a potion 5 or 6 tiles without any sort of perks. Potion of Health also now dispels negative things. This is fantastic, and the Potion of Dispel has been removed. Potion of Stability applies immunity to negative alterations, which is really quite nice. That way you can go up against bulkies and know they're not going to stun you. Defensive potions are stronger. Restoration potions have been rebalanced. I wonder what this looks like, but there's no numbers here. Scrolls, they have their mana cost scale on their level, so making it cheaper at lower levels. They've added scrolls for the following skills: Axe Boomerang, Poison Daggers, Charge, Super Spin, that's a big one, Grape Shot, Assassinate, that's kind of a big one, Magic Missiles, Hammer of Faith, and Beasting. Removed Scorching Wave. I don't know why they removed this one. It was a pretty fun skill, to be honest. Maybe it was a little too strong because it hits a lot of stuff. And then perks, I'm not going to go through all of these. There's a whole lot of generally buffs to these. There's, for instance, the Spiky Counter, which is something I really like building. The base damage has gone up quite a bit to 50. Let's see, what are the other ones? The mana growth on some of these is better. There's more damage on proximity shots. The base damage on Poisonous has gone up, which is nice. Human Ballista has a nerf here. You can see it used to hit at range 1. Now it only hits at range 2. This is the skill where you would shoot 2 shots out of your body as if you had a ballista. The problem with this is now when enemies get up to your character in melee, the ballista can no longer shoot them and prevent them from hitting you. That's obviously the reason why this has been changed, but that does suck. You don't have that extra layer of defense against monsters getting to you anymore. Potion throw range has gone up to 15, which is ridiculous. That's like across the map. Relentless has been nerfed. This was pretty much a go-to on most melee characters, in my opinion. It used to be that if you had 3 or fewer current movement points and attack in melee, you get 2 movement points. So you could sort of infinitely chain along enemies, moving like really quite far. Now it's if you have 3 or less current movement points and attack in melee range, you restore 1 movement point, increased by 1 if you kill a target. So this is definitely a nerf. They probably wanted to lower your ability to just hop along an entire side of a battlefield, basically for 1 perk. Blood magic is really interesting. I'm not going to read this all out because it's a lot of speculation and a lot of information, but they've changed the way the skills cost now, and they've also changed how some of these other abilities work when you have the blood magic perk, so we're going to have to wait and see what all of these end up doing exactly. So that's going to be really interesting. Mana Shield becomes Blood Shield. I wonder exactly what that means. Speaking of Mana Shield got a small buff, maybe a big buff actually in practicality, I'm not sure yet, but it used to be that the amount of mana you spent was giving you that amount of block for 3 turns. Now, it's 2 mana gives you 3 block, so, you know, spending small or odd increments of mana won't give you block anymore, so that's a nerf, but in terms of spending like 6 mana now would become 9 block instead of 6, so could end up being pretty big. I do find it fun to build those hybrid characters that use like say a scepter or a power staff and then also have like a melee weapon and they build like armor and block and stuff. That can be quite fun. There's also a bunch of changes to omens. Generally they are buffs to how much mana people are getting, how much materials you're getting, the health bonuses. They've nerfed the slot cost of a bunch of these from 2 slots for an omen to 1, which is great. One of them went up, this slot cost went from 2 to 3, but for the most part these things are better. So I would definitely read these all specifically, especially when you start your next run. This one's pretty good, armor bonus from 25 to 40, that's pretty huge. The block one went down, I'm assuming that was too strong, especially the way that it works, you know, multiplicatively with the melee damage you're receiving. Building's got to change. So the production upgrade, the production plus cost has gone up from 100 gold to 120, and then the production plus has been removed. The help buildings have gone up in cost, and then the item level upgrades have gone down in cost. So the first level is the same at 150, but then 300 went to 270, 560 went to 500. And then the mana well, the base max mana bonus has gone up to 5, and the max mana bonus, if you upgrade it, has gone up to 10. This makes this a more viable option for an entire worker's use. And then this is huge. This counters an issue I had in my most recent playthrough that I don't think you all have seen yet. It hasn't come out, but defenses, walls, blitzs, and catapults can be built adjacent to city buildings, which is great because I messed up and put a building on the edge of the town. I couldn't build walls next to it, so every night I had to build a bunch of barricades and just like watch the enemies smash through them, get to the building, and I had to like stop them before they could get there. But now I can just put walls there, which is great. Warp gate cost went down, which is great because this was a fairly prohibitive amount of materials to spend on a warp gate. This is much more reasonable. Maps and enemies. So Gildenberg had some tweaks. Lakeburg had some tweaks as well, depending on weapon balance. It's hard to tell what that's going to be. I'm wondering if maybe the boss of Lakeburg, I won't name them here, but they may have lost some health or something since we've lost so much isolation damage on things like Assassinate. Corpses, it appears that they're going to appear more often early nights and being more controlled in numbers in the later nights. That's fine. I would wish that they would still stay huge numbers in the later nights because they're free walls, but that's okay. There's been a bunch of changes to the sound, and then there's been a bunch of bug fixes, so I'm not going to go through all of this, of course, but you do want to check these out. I see this one here, the poisoning UI is no longer taking all the screen. That's something I have recorded many times in the past few weeks, seeing the text take over the entire screen, which is really fun. Alright everybody, I just wanted to go through these patch notes. I hope you guys are all going to enjoy the changes to the game. They look really fun and interesting. I'm very curious to see how the weapons are gonna work out. It looks like most of them have just been straight buffed, but the fact that, say, offhand weapons perform a completely different function, and the way that they've nerfed some of the multipliers on abilities is going to be really interesting to find out. I'm going to have to relearn what kind of skills in combination will kill enemies now. So thank you everybody so much for watching this patch rundown for The Last Spell, patch 1.0. Everybody, we are out of early access. What a fantastic game. I can't wait to play this for years to come. Check out my channel if you want to see some playthroughs. I have since started a new series based on the full reset that happened like months ago, and I'm on in Lakeburg as of the recording of this video, so go ahead and join me for that process if you want to see me try to get through the final boss of that one and move on to Glenwald. Thank you again for watching, and I will see you in my next video.